What's up YouTube, and welcome to another draw along with me. This is today's design where the canvas size is 2000 by 2000. There's a link in the description down below to all the requirements that you're going to need: the palette, the wolf stamps, there's also a werewolf if you want to give it that Halloween theme, as well as the tree collection and the stipple collection for the stars in the background. If you're new here, I post Procreate content every single week, so if you'd like some tutorials to follow along with, hit that subscribe button down below and turn on the notification bell. And if you can't get enough Joel Create tutorials, there's a link in the description down below to my Patreon, where you can get access to even more tutorials every single month and show your support for the channel. And with all that said, let's get started. So once we're into our canvas, the first thing we're actually going to want to do is we're not going to change the background color. We're actually going to go ahead and create a layer on top that will mask essentially everything, but without actually using a mask. So what we're going to do is we're going to go up to our colors in our palette, and we're going to use this color here in the bottom left of the collection. And then we're going to go to our layers. We're going to make sure we're on this empty layer. We're going to go up to our brush library, and we're going to scroll down until we get to the calligraphy section. And we're going to use the monoline brush. It doesn't matter what size your brush is, I'll make mine a little bit larger so you can see it on the screen. But essentially we're going to draw in a circle in the middle of the screen. So you draw in a circle, and then when you get to your start point, you hold your pen down and you put your finger on the screen to get a perfect circle. Now you want to go for something roughly around about that sort of size. And then what you want to now do is just grab your cursor at the top here, and then make sure snapping is turned on with this toggle here, meaning I will hit an orange line both vertically and horizontally to let me know that that circle is perfectly in the center of our canvas. Then tap on your cursor when you're done. Now what we're going to do is we're actually going to drag the color into the outside and then leave that as is. So essentially now we've got this layer which we're going to continue to use at the very top of all of our layers, and then everything we now draw will nicely sort of only show within the boundary of this circle. So it's like using a mask but not using a mask. What we will do though is we'll go to our background color layer, and we're going to go ahead and change the color out of that to this color here in the first sort of stack of colors, the second row. So tap on that and to change that like so, and then hit done, and you'll see a very small amount of contrast now between the two. But we're going to go ahead and we're going to create a new layer, and every time we just need to make sure that this circle layer that we just created is right at the top. So every time you create a new layer, just make sure this is still set up there. Now on this new empty layer, we're going to go to our colors and we're going to select the top color in that second column. So top color there, and again we're going to draw in a circle, and we are going to hold our pen down at the end and put your finger on the screen to get a perfect circle. Something roughly around about that sort of size is good. And I'm going to drag and drop our color into that circle. And then again, let's grab our cursor, but let's just only get the vertical line. And we want to position it quite high in the sky. Something roughly like that is good. Then we're going to go up to our layers. We're going to create a new layer. And we're going to drag our little moon here that we just created above that empty layer. And on that empty layer, we're going to go to our brush library, airbrushing, and the soft brush. And we're going to make our brush size, say, let's go for about 35%, and tap in the middle of the screen, and you'll get this sort of glowing orb. Now what you want to do is just grab your cursor and then pinch out a little bit. You want to position it so it runs through the center of our moon at the top here, and just scale that up a little bit more if you need to until you get this sort of size, and then tap on your cursor when you're done. And then we'll simply just lower the opacity down of that, and we're going to lower that down in the sky to roughly around about 50%. Now you can adjust this freely as you wish. I think you could potentially even go slightly lower than that. You could go down to about 35% if you want. Then we're going to go and do one more thing for the moon. We're going to tap on the moon layer itself, swipe it to the left and duplicate it. The bottom one out of the two, we're going to go to our layer options by tapping on the N here, and we're going to change that to add. Then we're going to go up to our adjustments. We're going to go to Gaussian blur and layer. And we're going to swipe from left to right, adding in a glow for the moon. And I'm going to go up to about 25% there, just to get my glow for the moon. And you can see your value at the top here. And then tap on your adjustments when you're done. And that's our moon done. But we also need to add some stars in here. So let's go ahead and above our moon, here in our layers, let's create a new layer. And then if you've downloaded the stipple collection in the description down below, you should be able to go to your brush library, find the stipple collection, and I always use the light one for my stars. And always vary your sizes really, like with 3 different sizes of stipple. So I've got 55% at the minute, and if I tap away I'll get some big stars, and that's good just to do a few like that. But then you want to lower your brush size down to, say, let's go down to about 25% maybe, and that'll add in some much lighter stars in the sky. You don't need to add too many, and if they're too bright, don't worry, we can always lower the opacity down. And then let's reduce the brush size down again one more time, down to about 10%, and this will add in some really small stars, and you can maybe even bunch these together a little bit more if you want to, just to fill out that night sky at the top. My advice would probably be normally to turn it around and do it the other way around, start with these smaller stars, but on this occasion I've started with the larger size and just filling in that space. Now again, if you're not happy and it's too bright, just go to your layers, tap on the end and lower your opacity down, and you can maybe lower it down to, say, 70% there to get a more faded out sort of sky up there. Now what we need to do is go ahead and start with the mountains in the background and then build our way forward in the design. So what we're going to do is we need to bear in mind that this sort of bottom left quadrant of our design is going to be mainly sort of the cliff top that the wolf is going to be on. So we kind of need to base our sort of mountains in this bottom right hand quadrant really. So just bear that in mind when you come to do them. Now we're going to go up to our layers, we're going to create a new layer, then we're going to go to our brush library and we're going to switch back on calligraphy to the monoline brush, and your brush size can be any size. I'm going to stick with, say, let's go for about 20%. The smaller you go, the more bumps and lumps you'll get in your design, so it's up to you how many you want in there. So on this empty layer, we're going to go up to our colors, and these columns here now are our mountains starting from back to front. So let's select this color here, so the top one in the third sort of row of column of colors even. And then we're going to go ahead and add in our first mountain. So I'm going to start down here. I'm going to create a mountain sort of shape like this, so adding in some nice lumps and bumps like so, and then go all the way around and then go all the way back to your start point. So you create one big sort of long line, and then you can drag and drop your color in like so. And then the next step is to add in the highlights from the moon. So all we do for that is we go to this layer that we just created and we create a new layer. We tap on that layer and we use a clipping mask, meaning whatever we paint on this layer now can only be painted within the same boundaries of that shape that we're clipped to. So if we go up to our colors now and we change it out to white, so we can double tap in the top left hand corner, or you can select the slightly off white here in the second column at the top there, which is what I'm going to do. And then what we want to do is anything here that faces our moon, we want to add in a nice big highlight. So for example, I'm going to start here on this peak, and I'll show you how that sort of affects the side of the mountain. And so we're going to start, say, up here. I'm going to create some big rocky sort of textures, and you can then go all the way up here if you want to, and then link your shape together and create shapes within this highlight. So for example, I always use the peaks of the hilltops just to create all the different highlights. Now I'm going all the way down to the end and linking my shape up there, because a lot of this down here will be hidden behind our cliff top. Likewise, then I'm going to go up to this peak here, and I'm going to create another smaller highlighted area and going all the way around, and then dragging and dropping my color in each time like so. And then all we do is just go up to our layers, tap on the N and lower it down to 10%, and that will give us a really nice sort of midnight glow on the mountains there. And that's all we've got to do for the highlights. Now we'd advise potentially lowering your brush down so that you can avoid some of these sort of really bumpy areas that are very rounded. If you lower your brush size all the way down, you might be able to get some smaller textures in there, but that's totally up to you and your preference. You can always come in here and adjust it. You could even grab your eraser and turn your eraser to a monoline brush and just cut out little bits so you can get some sharper corners like that, and maybe even dig into some of your shapes that you've already created, creating some nice rough texture on the side of the mountain, and some more pointed parts, and then some rounded flatter areas as well. But that's generally the look you want to go for. From that, we can now move on to our next mountain in front and repeat the process. So we're going to go up to our layers, we're going to create a new layer. We're going to grab our next color, which is the column over here, so the fourth column that's got some content in, and we're going to select the top color. And then we're going to go ahead and on that empty new layer, we're going to draw in our next mountain. And then starting, say, somewhat down here, you may want to create a different style of mountain. So this one kind of comes down and swoops quite low. Maybe this one is a lot more like sort of sharp, higher points on it. And you can overlap some of your other mountain in front as well, and then go all the way around and link up to your start point. And then when you drag and drop your color in, you'll have another mountain here to then add in the same highlights. And to do that, we do the same process. We go ahead and we create a new layer above that mountain. We tap on that layer and we clipping mask. We go to our colors, and let's grab this off-white again, the second column top color. And if you want to, you can even reduce your opacity down right now to 10% on this layer, so everything you now draw in is the correct color. And then again, you use these peaks to work out what's facing the moon and what's not. So anything on a peak to the right is not facing the moon, and anything on a peak to the left is facing the moon. So maybe we add in an area here and create a nice jagged area and go all the way around to your start point. Drag and drop your color in, and then drag and drop your color in, and then that will give you a peak. Let's do the same here. So let's create, and you can come into the mountain if you want to, like this, and then create sort of big jagged areas that are all getting some moonlight, and then drag and drop your color in like so. And if there's something you don't like, for example like this part here, again just go up to your eraser and then just chop away at it, or even just completely wipe it out if you don't like it at all. Something like that's a lot better. And grab your brush again and then carry on down your mountainside. So you can create some big areas, you can create some smaller areas like so, and drag and drop your color in. And then here I'm just going to create a sort of rough one because I know a lot of this is going to get covered up with the next mountain. Drag and drop your color in, but ultimately you should end up with something a bit like that. The next step is to then grab our next mountain in front. So let's go up to our layers, create a new layer. Let's go ahead and grab this color here on the right hand side that's on its own, and let's then go ahead and draw in our next one. So this one, we've added two sort of relatively big ones. Let's add one that sort of just sits in front of these. So maybe I'm going to make my peak somewhat maybe here. So I'm going to start, say, out here. I'm going to create a little peak and then just let that just tail off down in front here, go all the way around until you link up to your start point, and then drag and drop your color in like so. And don't worry if there's any sort of mishaps down here because we're going to cover up a lot of that anyway, but you can see the difference in mountains that I've created here. So now this one's sort of more of like a flatter mountain that's going to sit in front. We're going to go ahead and we're going to do the same process. We're going to create a new layer. We're going to tap on that layer and we're going to make it a clipping mask. We're going to lower the opacity straight down to 10%, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to grab our slightly off-white here, and then we're going to draw in our peaks. From our peaks, our highlights. So let's go ahead and create a big highlight for this one. I'm just going to do that and create one big highlighted area such as that. And then likewise, the right hand side of this peak doesn't get anything, but then there's another peak. So this area here just gets a very small amount of highlighted area. Drag and drop your color in, and then you should end up with two little hills in front. Now what we're going to go ahead and do is just add in a subtle shadow in behind each one's, just to try and add in a little bit more depth with the colours. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to grab the darker colour on each column and add it in as a shadow. So what we'll do is we're going to start at the back again, which was this column here of colours. Now we're going to select the darker colour. We're then going to go up to our layers. We're going to go back down to the mountain itself and we're going to tap on it and we're going to alpha lock it. We're then going to grab our brush library and our airbrushing and soft brush. And then what we're going to do is, with our brush size set to, say, let's go for something roughly around about 5%, in behind this mountain here and this mountain here, in this sort of gap down here, we're just going to sort of paint from left to right, adding in some shadow in here, just to sort of separate it from the mountains in front of it. That's all we're going to do. So it's very subtle, but you can see my sort of shadow here and the original colour here. Then what we're going to do is we're going to go up to our layers. We're going to go up to the next mountain in front. We're going to tap on that and we're going to alpha lock it. We're going to go up to our colors, which is the next column, the bottom color. So it's actually the fourth column with some colors in, and the bottom color. And then that's this mountain here. And for this, we're just going to do the same. I've increased my brush size a smidge up to roughly about 8%, and just adding in some darker area just over here on the right hand side. going backwards and forwards on myself, just darkening up that edge. Now this mountain in front, we don't need to worry about adding a shadow to. I feel like this is just a really nice subtle sort of extra sort of depth to the mountain, that's all. So now what we're going to do is we're going to get started on the cliff top here. So let's go to our layers. Let's go up to the top, but underneath our circle layer. Let's create a new layer. We're going to go to our same as our background color, which is this one here in the bottom left. And then with our brush library, we're going to go back to calligraphy and monoline. And we're going to draw in the cliff top that the wolf is actually going to sit on. What I recommend is if you start out here and then come into the center and then make your way down, we do that on purpose so that we can make a bigger shape than we need, so that if we need to drag it or rearrange it in a second, we can do, because we want to make sure our wolf sits smack bang in the middle underneath the moon there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out here, I'm going to come to this point here, I'm going to create a cliff and then go all the way down to the edge. I'm going to start roughly say here, draw that in like so, and then make that cliff top just sort of come underneath itself a little bit like that, and then you should be able to drag and drop your colour in if you went all the way off the edge of your canvas, and then you can grab your cursor as I mentioned and just position it where you need it and how you want it. So something like that's pretty good. We want to make sure our wolf's in the middle, and we'll probably move this in a second, because what we'll now do is add the wolf in. So what we'll do is we'll create a new layer, and then we're going to go to the brush and the stamp that I provided in the description. Now it's up to you which brush you want to use. I'm going to use the wolf stamp. There is a werewolf though as well, and my brush size is going to be set to about 20%. And all we're going to do is simply tap in the middle of the screen to add our wolf. Then we're going to grab our cursor, scale it down, and making sure that we leave the option of snapping turned on, you should be able to position it and get that orange line down the middle. Now when you position it on your cliff top, if you're not particularly happy with the sort of positioning of it, we can readjust it if you want to. You can even make sure it hits the orange line both horizontally and vertically if you want, so that it's perfectly in the center of our canvas like so. Now I'm actually going to do that, which means when I tap on my cursor, I've got a gap underneath, and all I need to do is just go back to my cliff layer, grab my cursor, and then drag that up and into position. Now I might have to actually even rotate it slightly because of the way that the legs are for the wolf. That's not a problem. We just rotate that at the top using the green handle, and then if I tap on my cursor when I'm done, my wolf's now perfectly in the middle of the canvas, and then we've got the cliff top underneath in position. Now the cliff top also needs some moonlight, so what we're going to do for that is we're going to go ahead and create a new layer above that layer, tap on it and clipping mask it, and in the same way we did before, we're going to change our colour out to this off-white, and then we're going to go up to our brush library, we're going to switch it out on the calligraphy option back to the monoline brush, and then from this point here you're essentially just going to draw in sort of a similar shape to the top of the cliff and go all the way around until you link up to your start point, and then drag and drop your colour in like so. Now as before, we want to lower the opacity down to 10%, which will then match all the other highlights. But what I wanted to do is I also wanted to just blend that out towards the edge just for the sake of this design. So I'm going to grab my eraser and I'm going to go to my airbrushing and the soft brush, and with my brush set to say 10% on this left hand side, I'm going to blend that white out at the edge of the design. So just going backwards and forwards, it's blending that out. So I just leave a little bit of moonlight there, and again it's just for the sake of the design. Obviously the highlight itself would go to the edge, and then we've got that highlight on the top of the cliff, and let's give our wolf a shadow. So all we do for that is we go up to our wolf, we swipe it to the left and duplicate it, and then the bottom one out the two, we grab our cursor, we flip it vertically, then we drag that down like so, and then zooming in, the back foot's meeting the back foot, but the front obviously isn't. So what we need to do is we need to grab the distort option, and then this handle here in the middle, and just drag that up until this paw somewhat touches that one, and then you may have to adjust the back legs as well so that the paws are all touching, and then you can tap on your cursor when you're done, and that will give your wolf a shadow on top of the cliff top reflecting from that moon. Now the next little touch we're going to do is add in some trees down here, and if you downloaded the brush collection you'll be able to do that nice and easily. We're going to go up to our layers, and then we can create a new one above our wolf for example and create a new layer, and then we're going to go ahead and grab our brush and go to the tree collection that's in the description down below, And there's loads of trees in here, and what you want to do is, I've got tree silhouette 17 selected. I'm going to change my color out to the same as the background, so this color here in the bottom left of the palette, again just to transition the design to the outside of the boundaries. And then we're going to go ahead and make my brush size, say, let's go for 35%. That's pretty good for size. I'm going to simply just tap away, adding in this tree a couple of times in these gaps. And then I'm going to switch mine out to a different version, so let's go for 15. Again, making sure the brush size is roughly the same, maybe 28, 30%. And then in the gaps, adding in this tree again. And you want to stagger your trees so that they don't have the same gap in between them. And then I'm going to grab one more tree. I'm going to go for tree 13 here. I'm going to make the brush size the same, so about 28, 30%. And then just tap in those gaps and then add in those trees and the forest that sits underneath this cliff top. What you want to just look for is any sort of big gaps in the tree and the forest here. And then the only thing I like to now do is, if I go to my layers, and we need to actually work at the very top now. If we go up to the top layer and create a new one above it, we're going to go ahead and go to our colors. I'm going to select this color here, so top of the third column that's got some colors in, so this color here. And then I'm going to simply go back to my brush library. I'm going to go to airbrushing and soft brush. Make the brush size, say, around about 30% and tap in the middle of your screen. You'll get a dark glow, but what we're going to do is we're going to grab our cursor, we're going to switch back to uniform, and we're going to scale that up like so, and we're going to make it nice and big. You might have to zoom out a little bit and then position that towards the top of your design. Now, I do this all the time in my ones because I like to just give a sort of different glow from the top. The one thing you have to remember now is to go to your layer, tap on that layer and clipping mask it, and that will clip now to the top outer circle that's been sort of containing our design, and it just adds a little bit of colour just up in this top area. And if you pinch with 2 fingers and go full screen with 4, you end up with today's finished design. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please drop a like down below, helps the channel out an awful lot, and hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. Be sure to share your designs with me on Instagram. The links to my Instagram, my Discord and my TikTok are in the description down below. And if you want even more Joel Create tutorials, there's a link to my Patreon where you can get access to even more tutorials every single month, as well as extra benefits on my Discord server, as well as sneak peeks. And with all that said, I'll see you in the next one.